Hey, I'm Jeff and welcome back to another video. These two little Alocasia silver dragon leaves were grown by corms, or sometimes they're referred to as bulbs. I'm going to show you the entire process of how to find them, how to propagate them, what I'm going to use to propagate them in regards to what type of growing medium, and then I have some corms in different stages of development that I want to show you guys, so let's check it out. I actually have a few different plants, but I'm going to start off with these two. I'll get to this Gaggiana aurea here in a second. The one that produces the most corms, in my opinion, or in my experience, is the Alocasia regal shield. And this is generally what you'll find. You'll see these little bulbs kind of sticking out of the soil. This one is grown in perlite right now. And honestly, these remind me like those little water towers when you go through like small towns in rural areas. You have those big water towers. That's what they look like to me, or that's what they remind me of. So this is the actual bulb, or corm as it's properly called, and this longer section is actually the rhizome, which it sprouts off of the main plant. It goes through the soil, or whatever growing medium it is that you're using, and it pushes out this corm, which can be used to make an entirely new plant. Sometimes these corms will pop out of the soil like this, but most times you'll find them in the soil. So if you're doing like a repot, or if you're putting some fresh soil in and you take the plant out of the pot, most times you'll find the corms in the soil. Now I'm going to be taking this one out of the pot because it has a few areas where the pot is actually bulging and it's quite hard. I'm curious to see if there's some corms growing in the perlite, plus I want to look at the root system. So I'm going to first take off these little guys and then I will remove it from the pot. So the process of removing these is actually pretty simple. You just take some pruning shears and then cut on that lower stem so that you get a little corm like this. Set that aside, and then I'm going to cut this one off as well, just at the base like that. So you get a little corm like this. So now I have two little corms. Just going to tip it upside down. The nice thing about perlite is it basically just falls out. So just giving it a little bit of a squeeze. Oh, I can see another corm right at the bottom, and that one just fell right off. I just picked it off. So here's another corm, and I'm curious to see what is pushing up against the side of this container. Giving it a light squeeze. Here is another corm. Oh, and this one just fell off too. So here is another one. So I got two from there. Here is yet another one. So this one, again, for some reason they're just falling right off. So there are, looks like 5 corms from this one single plant. I just quickly placed the perlite back in the pot, and I will put this back underneath the grow light. These ones are absolutely gorgeous. Like, look at the underside of the leaves here, just beautiful. Okay, so here are our harvested corms. So here are the 2 that was poking out of the soil, and then here is the 3 that was underneath the soil. So I'm going to set these aside, and then I'll show you how I'm going to propagate them so that they can be successful new little plants. I'm going to chop off a couple corms from this absolutely gorgeous Alocasia Gaggiana aurea, and then I'll show you how I'm going to propagate them, and then I will get to the rest of the plants and see what kind of corms I can find. But this is the one that I wanted to do for today. They're not the largest corms, which I'll show you here. So here is one little corm right there, and there's actually a little growth point right beside it. So it's going to start to produce some new leaves from that growth point. Here's a little corm right there, and here is another one right in the soil. And I think there's another one right back here. This little nub right there is another corm. So technically 3 on this plant. I'm going to let this smaller one grow a little bit larger, and I'm going to harvest these 2 little corms, and hopefully I can get another aurea plant like this. The process is identical. I have to be a little bit more delicate with this one because I don't want to get too close to this new growth point to damage it. So this one is tiny, and I'm just going to get this little corm out of here. So just a tiny little corm, and then I got the other one on the back side. It's just underneath the soil a little bit, so I'm just going to lightly scrape away at that until I can see that little stem portion, and then same thing, just cut that. And here's another little baby corm. I did separate and label the corms with my fancy little label maker. I just want them to be growing separately so I can know which ones I'm producing. Now you can see there's obviously quite a bit difference in size between the corms. So I'm not too sure if it's plant specific or if it just is a matter of maturity. So I don't know if these corms are older than these ones, or if the Aurea typically produce smaller corms. That I'm not too sure about. If you know, let me know down in the comment section about the size of the corms. I will be using the perlite prop box method. I just went out and bought a new Tupperware container, and then I bought these labels for the plants, and then I just made a little kind of a divider section so that I can place the individual or the different types of corms in here. So I'm not going to go through the entire process of how I set up the perlite prop box. Basically, I just add some perlite in a clear Tupperware container. I rinsed off the perlite and I drained it so that there's no standing water on the bottom. It is only just slightly moist, and the way I can tell if the perlite is wet or dry is if you actually squish the perlite, you can feel and you can see there's a bit of water on my finger or my hand here. When planting these in whatever growing medium that you choose, I know a lot of people will stick these right in soil. Others will use sphagnum moss. There is a top and a bottom for these little corms. So the portion that was sticking out of the soil, this is the top. And the portion that was attached to the plant, this is the bottom. You don't necessarily need like that long tail. I'm just going to cut that off. Something like that is all you need. So this is the top, and the portion that was attached to the plant, that is the bottom. So all you do is take your corm and then just stick it in the perlite with the top facing up and the little tail into the perlite or whatever medium it is you're using. And then you just take these, I'm not even going to cut this one off, and then just stick it in the perlite just like that. And do that for all of them. They don't have to be submerged. They just have to have the top portion, I would say like they don't have to be submerged, but maybe like half of the corm covered in perlite. Now I can add my little label just to the back side like that, so I know those are the Regal Shields. And now for these two little guys, being really delicate, same thing. The cut portion goes into the perlite, and the top portion is sticking up. These guys are so tiny. Oops. There. And then I'll add the tag in here as well. I did forget to mention that a lot of people actually remove this outer casing. If it is kind of that brown, kind of crusty exterior, a lot of people will peel these back and then pot them up in their growing medium. I've never done that. Some people say it's easier for the corm to establish roots. I'm not going to do that with this one. I typically don't. I find with the high moisture and high humidity with these prop boxes, it kind of softens it up anyway, so I don't want to damage any of the corm or anything like that. So I'm just sticking it in there, covering it up about halfway, and then I'll just add the lid, and that's pretty much it. I'll seal it up. Okay, here is my perlite prop box. I have a number of different types of plants currently growing in this container, but this is one that I want to show you guys. This is a little baby Alocasia black velvet. Here is the bottom of the corm. All the roots kind of grow from kind of the middle to upper half, and it's well rooted. This one's definitely ready to go into some soil. So this is how they grow, and they grow really well in the perlite. I've never really had any issues. And the nice thing about growing in perlite and then transferring to soil is because it is kind of a chunky, coarse mixture, it doesn't have a tough transition like when you pot it up into soil. If you're to water propagate these and then you place it in soil, sometimes water propagations can have a little bit of a difficult transition, just going from that water to a very dense soil. Sometimes the roots, if they're not in a well-drained mixture, can basically suffocate and get root rot. So this is a healthy little corm cutting, and it was off of this alocasia as well. It was just popping out of the soil. Cut it off, put it in my perlite prop box, and I think this has been in here for probably about 2 months. I'm gonna see if I can find one that is in right here. So you can see I did not remove the outer casing. You see the roots just broke through that kind of bark exterior. See if I can peel some back. Actually, I'm not going to touch it. And there is a new little growth point popping out as well. This, I believe, is a black velvet alocasia. So that is kind of the various stages from the corm to the rooting process and then to the growth. See if there's any roots. Oh, okay, this one's rotten. This is the first, there's nothing inside of it, just mush. Okay, this is the first rotten corm I've ever had in my perlite prop box. So that one's not good. Going in the trash. Just give them a little bit of a squeeze. If they are firm, they are still viable corms. And this one doesn't have any roots yet, but it's still firm. It's not rotten like that other one. That's weird, that's never happened to me before. Here's another little baby corm. Again, I have no idea which variety this is, so it's got some nice little spindly roots there. So yeah, until these sprout some leaves, I honestly don't know which variety they are. I know there is probably a couple dragon scale, silver dragon, and some black velvet in this prop box. I think these might be the dragon scale ones right here. So I'm gonna let these continue to root and get some leaves, and then I may transfer them over to this prop box where they are labeled. And yes, I do grow alocasias in soil. Here is my beautiful Jacqueline. It's actually getting a new leaf as we speak. This one is in a nice chunky aroid mix. Here is another Regal Shield. These were taken as plant division. And this one's in soil, and then I have that one back there that is in perlite. I have a few other alocasias as well, which actually I'll show you over here. This one, I'm not exactly sure which variety this is. It's a large elephant ear. It is getting a new leaf. I like to use these clear orchid pots because you can see the corms growing along the side. Doesn't look like there's any with this one. It looks like it's just a pot full of roots. Here's another alocasia. This is the Green Shield, I believe. This is a newer one for me, so there's a number of different stems in there. So this is my Alocasia Silver Dragon, which I featured in a video from about, I think 2 years ago, where I saved it from root rot and I actually placed it in perlite. I do get a lot of questions asking if I do grow it in perlite long term. And yes, it is still in perlite. I have propagated this one a couple times. I've taken some corms off of the plant. It also had a few other growth points, which I did a plant division. So here's one popping through the top. And I just like to move the soil just out of the way, and then take your pruning shears and then just cut right below it. If I can get in there. There's a growth point right here I don't want to damage, so just get right in there, cut it. So here's a new corm. Here's my dragon scale. It's not looking the greatest right now. It's getting some yellowing, but it is getting a new leaf, so I'm not too worried about these other ones. Looks like there may be some corms in the perlite, so I'm actually going to take this one out and have a look at the roots as well. So I'm just going to tip this one upside down so all the perlite can fall out, just lightly squeezing it. And I already see a couple corms. Okay, this is one that I want to propagate more of, and I can see there's a few here already. There's actually quite a few. So nice roots. And you can see there's a few corms, one right there, there's one right here, and there's actually one on the inside, quite a large one right there as well. I am dripping perlite everywhere. Now, this is where it's had a previous corm. I like to pull these off, otherwise it's just going to end up rotting. Here's another section right there. Just pull that right off. And now for the corms, again, just take your pruning shears, snip at the base of the corm, set it aside. I'm just removing that little, I don't even know what you call it, rhizome, I guess. I guess it's a rhizome. Okay, just pulled this one off. It actually looks like it's getting a new little growth point while it's even still attached. So there's two, and then what is this? Looks like some soil. Yeah, I definitely have some soil left on this one. Oh, it's a little soil pod. Okay, and then I'm going to take the tiny little bulb here as well. So I have 3 bulbs, and now I'm going to pot this back up. Now you might be asking yourself why I'm using perlite. You can basically grow a plant in anything as long as you're providing it with the proper watering. So I water my perlite no different than I do with my plants that are in soil. I check the soil, I keep an eye on the leaves, making sure they're not getting droopy. If it's dry or if it's close to being dry, then I'll give it some water. I also use Dynagrow Foliage Pro fertilizer mixed in or diluted in my water. So when the plant needs to be watered, I will fertilize with that water fertilizer mixture. So it's no different than growing it in soil. You can grow a plant in like aquarium stones or like basically anything. It doesn't have to be in soil. It doesn't have to be leca. You can grow it in many different types. And the reason why I like perlite specifically is it's really cheap and it provides a lot of airflow to the roots. So it's a very light, kind of fluffy medium. It holds on to moisture, like if you squish the perlite, I can feel it on my fingers, and it just provides excellent airflow. Whereas if you have it in a really dense soil, that's where you run into those root rot issues. So I love perlite for growing alocasias as well as propagating them. So now I'm just going to place this back in its pot. Now for the little black velvet corm, the one with the roots and leaf, I'm just going to be potting this one up in perlite as well. I'm just dumping the perlite in the little pot here, and then I'm going to give it some water. And for the first little while, just because it comes from a high humid, high moisture environment like the perlite prop box, you want to make sure that this doesn't dry out. So you can cover it with a plastic clear cup, or you can put it in like a little terrarium or something like that. You just don't want it to dry out. Otherwise, it's obviously not going to survive. Just going to put this in this little plastic cover pot, set it aside, and I will provide some updates down the road. But I think that's going to be pretty much it for this video. If you have any comments or questions, please leave it down below in the comment section. Thanks for watching this video. Hopefully it helped you. And yeah, hopefully you can grow more alocasias from these corms. So thanks for watching. Take care. Bye.